My mother physically blocked the doorway of the attorney's office, her hand planted flat against the heavy oak frame. "Wait in the hall, Cassandra," she sneered, her voice dripping with dismissive contempt. "This reading is for real family, not the domestic help." I turned to walk away, fully expecting to spend another afternoon treated like an outsider. But before I took 2 steps, the attorney adjusted his glasses, looked directly at my mother, and said in a razor-sharp tone, "No, Victoria, she stays. In fact, if Cassandra isn't sitting in that chair, this reading doesn't happen at all." My mother's smirk vanished instantly, and my brother's arrogant smile melted into sheer confusion. "Follow my story until the end, and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. You won't believe what was in that envelope. My name is Cassandra Turner. I'm 32 years old, and for over a decade I was treated like invisible domestic help by my own flesh and blood. After my grandmother Evelyn's funeral, my mother Victoria and my brother Julian marched into attorney Mr. Sterling's office with smug, victorious smiles, ready to claim what they believed was rightfully theirs. For 12 long years, I had cared for Grandma Evelyn through her declining health, handling her medical appointments, cooking her meals, and managing her house, while Victoria and Julian treated her like an inconvenient cash machine. Now, sitting in that leather chair across from Mr. Sterling, I realized that my grandmother had been watching everything. To fully understand how sweet that moment in the lawyer's office was, you have to understand the nightmare I had lived through for the last decade. Ever since my father passed away when I was 20, my mother, Victoria, made it abundantly clear that there was only one child who mattered in our household: my brother, Julian. Julian was the golden child who could do no wrong. My mother drained her savings to buy him luxury sports cars, fund his failed business ventures, and pay off his credit card debts. Meanwhile, I was expected to work 2 part-time jobs just to pay for my own college tuition, while simultaneously running every errand for the family. When Grandma Evelyn's health began to deteriorate 10 years ago, Victoria and Julian saw an opportunity. They moved Grandma into a small guest suite on our property, claiming it was out of love. But in reality, neither of them spent more than 5 minutes a week with her. Julian only dropped by when he needed to slip a $100 bill out of her purse, and my mother only visited when she wanted Grandma to sign over money for Julian's rent. The actual work of taking care of a sick, aging woman fell entirely on my shoulders. I washed her clothes, prepared 3 meals a day according to her strict dietary needs, managed 12 different prescription medications, and held her hand through terrifying late-night emergency room visits. Whenever I asked my mother or Julian for help, Victoria would glare at me and say, "You're her granddaughter, Cassandra. Stop being selfish. Family makes sacrifices." They treated me like unpaid, underappreciated domestic help, completely convinced that when Grandma passed, her $2 million estate would be handed straight to them. They had no idea that while they were busy ignoring her, Grandma and I were sharing quiet, late-night conversations that would change our lives forever. Mr. Sterling cleared his throat, pulling a thick, leather-bound binder from his briefcase. The heavy, formal sound of paper turning echoed through the quiet room. My mother sat up straight, crossing her arms and tossing her head back with a triumphant look. Julian leaned forward in his chair, tapping his polished Italian leather shoes against the carpet, practically salivating at the thought of the payout. "We are gathered today for the reading of the last will and testament of Evelyn Beatrice Vance," Mr. Sterling began, his voice calm and methodical. "As the executive of this estate, it is my legal duty to read her final wishes exactly as they were recorded and validated by 2 independent witnesses." My mother let out a loud, theatrical sigh. Oh, skip the legal gibberish, Arthur. We all know how this works. Evelyn wanted Julian to have the house and the liquid account so he could expand his business, and I'm taking over the private investments. Just show us where to sign so we can get out of here. Julian nodded eagerly. Yeah, Mr. Sterling. I've already got buyers lined up for the main house, so let's speed this up. Mr. Sterling looked over his glasses with a look of quiet disdain, completely unbothered by their impatience. Victoria, I advise you to remain quiet until I have finished reading. The law requires full transparency, and every sentence of this document holds legal weight. He turned back to the page and began reading through the standard initial distributions. He listed off minor sentimental items. A silver tea set given to an old high school friend. A collection of vintage books donated to the local library, and a small charitable donation to the hospice center that had assisted us during Grandma's final weeks. With every minor item named, my mother's eyes rolled further back in her head, while Julian kept checking his designer watch, totally oblivious to the storm brewing right in front of them. Mr. Sterling paused, taking a deliberate sip from his glass of water before turning to the main section of the document. The air in the room grew heavy, charged with a sudden, palpable shift in tension. We now move to Section 4, Mr. Sterling declared, his voice dropping an octave, carrying an undeniable gravity. Regarding the primary real estate assets, liquid accounts, and private investment portfolios held under the Vance family revocable trust. My mother sat up taller, adjusting her diamond necklace. Finally, she whispered under her breath, shooting a gloating smirk in my direction. 8 months prior to her passing, Mr. Sterling continued, looking directly at Victoria. Evelyn Vance summoned me to her residence to execute a formal, legally binding codicil to her original will. This modification was made in full mental competency, as verified and signed by 2 independent, board-certified physicians. Julian's tapping foot suddenly froze. Wait, a codicil? What does that mean? Mr. Sterling adjusted the paper in his hands and began reading my grandmother's exact words directly from the page. It has come to my attention during the final years of my life that my daughter Victoria and my grandson Julian regard my existence not as a relationship to be cherished, but as a financial transaction to be calculated. I have laid in my bed and listened to them discuss the liquidation of my home while I was still breathing in the next room. I have watched them treat my granddaughter Cassandra as an unpaid servant while she sacrificed her youth, her ambition, and her peace to nurse me through my darkest hours. My mother's face drained of color as if she'd been slapped across the face. This is absurd. She was confused. Cassandra manipulated her. Silence, Victoria, Mr. Sterling snapped, slamming a fist onto the table with an authority that echoed off the walls. I am reading a sworn legal document. If you interrupt me again, I will have security escort you out of this building immediately. Julian stared at the desk, his jaw slack, while my mother gasped for air, completely unaccustomed to being put in her place. Mr. Sterling cleared his throat and resumed reading from the document, his sharp eyes darting over the legal terms. Therefore, I hereby revoke all prior provisions granting real estate or liquid capital to Victoria Vance and Julian Vance. The primary residence, valued at $1.44 million, along with the secondary private investment accounts, totaling $800,000, are to be placed immediately into an irrevocable grantor trust. My mother grabbed the edge of the conference table so tightly, her knuckles turned ghostly white. "Who is the trustee?" she demanded, her voice cracking with pure panic. "Who gets the house?" Mr. Sterling looked over the top of his glasses, his gaze landing squarely on me. The sole primary beneficiary and designated trustee of the Vance family estate is Cassandra Turner. She receives full unencumbered ownership of the real estate, all liquid capital, and complete authority over all physical assets. "What?" Julian yelled, springing out of his chair so fast it flipped backward onto the carpet. "She's a nobody. She doesn't even have a real job. I have $200,000 in business debt coming due next month. You can't give everything to her." "Your grandmother was fully aware of your debts, Julian," Mr. Sterling stated coldly. "Which brings me to the conditional clause regarding you and your mother. Evelyn has allocated a one-time stipend of $5,000 each for Victoria and Julian." $5,000! My mother shrieked, her voice echoing off the glass walls of the high-rise office. "That barely covers my car payment for 2 months. This is an outrage." She was insane. "The stipend," Mr. Sterling continued, completely ignoring her outburst, "is strictly contingent upon both of you signing a complete waiver of claims and vacating the guest quarters on the property within 48 hours. If you attempt to contest this will, the stipend is forfeited, and the trust is instructed to pursue full legal prosecution for any unauthorized funds taken during Evelyn's lifetime." The conference room erupted into total chaos. My mother slammed both palms onto the mahogany desk, her eyes wide and wild with fury. "This is a scam," she screamed, her voice breaking into an unhinged shriek. Cassandra coerced her. She fed my mother drugs. She brainwashed her. "I'm hiring the best lawyer in the city, Arthur, and I'm going to sue you and this useless girl into the ground." Julian was hyperventilating, pacing back and forth across the room while clutching his head. "Mom, you don't understand," he gasped, his voice trembling with sheer terror. "The collectors, they're going to seize my car. They're going to come after my accounts. We were supposed to pay them off today." Mr. Sterling didn't even flinch. He slowly reached into his suit jacket, pulled out a thick sealed parchment envelope, and laid it flat in the center of the table. "Evelyn anticipated your reaction, Victoria," Mr. Sterling said with icy calm. "She left a final letter addressed directly to you, and she explicitly requested that I read it aloud in the event of an outburst." My mother froze, her chest heaving as Mr. Sterling unsealed the envelope and unfolded the paper. "Victoria," he read, his voice carrying the calm authority of a judge handing down a sentence. "If you are hearing this, it means you have thrown a tantrum, just as I predicted. For 10 years you thought I was blind and deaf. You thought I didn't notice the thousands of dollars you secretly transferred from my accounts to cover Julian's reckless spending. You thought I didn't hear you calling me a burden in the kitchen, while Cassandra was in the pharmacy picking up my medicine. Every time you stole from me, I wrote it down. Every receipt, every bank transfer, every fake invoice you manufactured is documented and locked in Mr. Sterling's vault. Try to contest this will, Victoria, and those documents will be handed directly to the district attorney." My mother's jaw dropped. The fiery rage in her eyes evaporated instantly, replaced by a cold, suffocating terror. Victoria collapsed back into her chair, completely broken and silent. Julian sank onto the floor against the wall, staring blankly at the carpet, as the reality of his ruin set in. They both knew they were completely trapped. Mr. Sterling slid a pen across the table toward them. "Sign the waiver and take the $10,000 total, or leave with nothing and prepare your defense for the police. You have 2 minutes to decide." With trembling hands, my mother signed the document, followed by a pale, speechless Julian. They grabbed their checks and hurried out of the office without looking back, disgraced and stripped of their arrogance. I sat in the quiet office for a moment, taking a deep breath of freedom for the first time in my life. Grandma Evelyn hadn't just left me in a state, she had given me my life back, protecting me the same way I had protected her. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have given them a second chance, or let them face the consequences? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching my story until the very end.